All right, we're going to call this regular monthly meeting of the Scarborough Sanitary District to order. We'll start with a roll call. Jason?
Here.
Mike?
Here.
Tony?
Here.
I'm here too. My name is Nick. Approval of the minutes from April.
Move approval.
Thank you, Jason.
Second.
Thank you, Tony. Any corrections? Additions, subtractions, barring none? All in favor? None opposed. Okey-doke. Superintendent's report.
A copy of the monthly report of operations for the month of April is included in your packet. Our average effluent flow for the month was 1.8 million gallons per day. Our effluent quality was well within our permitted limits. We averaged 96 BOD removal and 97% TSS removal with average concentrations of 10 and 6. Copy of the pump station flows is also included in your packet. No issues were noted. T-Buck has submitted pay application number 5 for the pump station number 1 construction. That was for $197,923.66. The wet well has been installed and partially backfilled. Progress meeting notes I did attach. We do have another progress meeting coming up next week. So in summary, the contract start date was March 8th. Notice to proceed was August 1st. So substantial completion is August 1st of 2025, and with a final completion of September 30th, 2025. Those dates still are held. So the total contract amount is $2,648,215. We've paid up to $578,491, and as I said, the amount due this application was $197,923. The contractor has started work on site for the dewatering upgrades at the plant. They have installed the new drain line, removed the existing boilers. Actually, the new boilers have shown up and are now installed, and they've started cutting out the existing concrete curbing in the odor control room, which is part of the project. So that project is really starting to kick forward. We have we have a construction meeting next week, which there will be a pay application along with that, which I'll report on at the next meeting. Pump Station 28, which is in the Downs. The contractor has been installing the gravity sewer that flows to the pump station. They have run into some geotechnical issues, the infamous blue clay, which they are currently consulting with a geotechnical engineer to come up with a plan to address the settling issues that they have been seeing. I think they got a plan in place now that seems to be working fine. On May 2nd, the Roots Learning Community visited the wastewater treatment facility for a tour. The students ranged from 8 to 11 years old and had highly sensitive olfactory nerves that were impacted during that tour. Nice picture of them all holding their noses. The district is part of a consortium of facilities that go out to bid for sludge disposal every few years. I think it's been 3 years ago was the last bid. Attached to the results of those bids, the consortium had 3 bidders, one of which did not bid on Scarborough sludges. Casella was the lowest bidder for Scarborough at a price of $166,000 per wet ton. Currently we utilize Casella, and our current rate is $165.79 per wet ton. So it was really a negligible increase in cost. Carl completed the installation of the 2 6-inch Penn Valley pumps that replaced the existing pumps that were 30 years old. This was a budgeted expense. And that's what I have for the report.
Cool. Questions for the superintendent? Go ahead, Mike.
I just have one comment. I know it's been wet, but I was surprised that we have 5.1 inches of rain recorded at the plant. That's a lot of rain.
It is.
Any other questions on the superintendent's report? Okay. One thing I forgot to mention at the beginning of the meeting, we have excused absences for Ben McDougal, Ruth Summers, and Joe Carroll. Thank you. Correspondence, we have none. We have no old business. Now we have new business. The 2024 annual audit, Willett and Associates.
Willett and Associates is here to present the 2024 annual audit, which I recommend approving. And Mike Dunn is here from Willett.
All right, a motion to approve the audit.
So moved.
Thank you, Jay.
Second?
Thank
So I'm all done?
Yeah, you're.
That was simple. So, we have a motion on the floor, now we can discuss
Let's
it.
discuss it.
If you don't mind introducing yourself, Mike, and
Yes.
go on.
Thank you. I'm Mike Dunn. I'm one of the partners at Willett and Associates. I've been doing the sewer district's audits for a number of years. I'm happy to present, and I'm glad you asked me to come here this month. Hopefully, everybody's got a copy of the financial statement, the governance letter, and also a copy of the PowerPoint I got up on the screen. So, the PowerPoint, for anyone who hasn't gone through it, it's starts out with the governance letter, which is that separate 3 or 4 page letter, and then get into the financials. Certainly, if anybody has questions as I'm presenting, I'm happy to take those and go through when we're there, or you can wait at the end. It doesn't make a difference to me, but we're going to start out with, just have the slides, and you can have the financials and the governance letter right next to you, and we can go through them. So I always start out with this first slide, in case there's people that are new and they're not familiar with audits. The purpose of our audit is, the primary purpose is to provide an opinion on the financials. The trustees get financials on a monthly basis, they review them, they're involved with those statements, but at the end of the year, they hire us to come in and do an audit. We perform procedures on those financial statements and to assist them in producing what's issued every year, and we put an opinion on those. This year, we're putting in an unqualified opinion, unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean opinion for the district. A couple other areas we help with, part of our procedures looks at internal controls of the district. If we have any suggestions to improve those controls, we would certainly put those to the trustees as suggestions. We didn't have any changes in controls for this year. The other thing we do is sometimes there's accounting standards, reporting standards that come out that the district will need to follow in order to be in accordance with GAAP, with generally accepted accounting principles. When those standards come out, we discuss them with management and help them implement those if need be. So again, starting out with the governance letter, as you look at it, it's 3 or 4 pages here, and it has things bolded and italicized on it. And I've kind of got it summarized right here on this one slide, but just to kind of go through these. The governance letter is a letter that we're required to issue to the trustees after our audit for results. These are the areas where we need to discuss if there were any issues or suggestions or just highlights in your financials that you should be aware of. They're going to be in this letter so that you're aware of them. The first area is qualified aspects of accounting practices. That covers 3 areas of the financial. Those would be the accounting standards, new accounting standards that come out, which I just discussed before. Also, any significant estimates that are recorded in your financials that you should be aware of. And then finally, if there are any significant disclosures that are in the notes of the financial statement. So you see the first paragraph, under that qualitative aspects of accounting practices, it talks about a new standard. So with the new lease that was signed with Verizon, that kind of went over our threshold, so we recommended to management to adopt this new lease standard that came out. And we discussed on how to adopt it and how to record it. We felt the best practice was probably not to record it all in full. So the lease disclosure talks about, and I think we've talked about it in prior meetings, talks about, as a lessor, you're going to receive, you're providing access or right of use of the district property, and you're going to be receiving lease or rent income for that. So where it's over a number of years, the way the lease standard reads, you're supposed to impute interest and possibly discounts, those type of items to the lease payments you're going to receive. In talking to management, those numbers were not significant, so we decided not to record any imputed interest or discounts or anything. So when you look at your financials, what you're going to look at as an asset, because it's basically a lease receivable, you're going to be looking at all the payments based on the signed agreement as just one number. On the flip side of that, because you're giving a right of use of that asset, you're going to be seeing what they call a deferred inflow of that same total. So this is just more of a financial statement presentation and disclosure. Accounting-wise, you're going to be recording the income just the way you normally do, and we're just going to reduce these numbers each year as you receive them and go on from there. So we felt that was the best way for the readers of the financial to understand what that is and basically connect with how that accounting works, rather than adding in, imputed interest, which was not significant to the financials. And we'll talk about that a couple more times during the presentation. This accounting estimates at the bottom of the page, we have a couple. There's depreciation. This year you had about $1.5 million in depreciation of your capital assets. This is an estimate because management decides on, the useful life of those assets when you buy them and how much is depreciated each year. This depreciation, when you review the financials, is allocated over a number of cost centers that have been set up in the financial. The best way to view this in the financial is the schedule in the back of operating expenses. It shows the depreciation and how it's allocated based on the assets over those cost centers. That's on page 23. Significant disclosures, we didn't feel any of the disclosures were unusual. They're all fairly standard disclosures in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, so we didn't have any significant disclosures there. And I'm going to back up because I forgot about the fair value of investments. The part of the assets of the district are investments. They're the reserve funds that you pay into each month or each quarter or at the end of the year, depending on how you do those. And there's a listing of these investments on page 19 in the notes, and they're at fair value. So that's different from a lot of the other assets on the financials, which is mostly on at cost, but these are on at fair value, so they're recorded based on those policies and and what's included in those assets. So there is a disclosure with those. Other areas on page 2 of the letter, difficulties performing the audit, corrected, uncorrected misstatements, disagreements with management representations, or consulting with other independent accountants. We really didn't have any issues there. We did have a few uncorrected misstatements, which is a schedule in the back of this letter. However, the difficulties performing the audits or disagreements, there was none of that during the audit. Everything was provided pretty quickly, and we definitely appreciate the help of Dave's staff to make that audit go as smooth as possible. Looking at the uncorrected misstatements, there's 3 of them this year. A couple of them are repeats, but, well, actually, one of them is a repeat, but there's another couple in there. The first one was we were performing our procedures and we found an invoice. It was paid towards the end of January that was for some December expenses. It was about $36,000 to Casella. Looking at that, we decided that probably the best thing to do is to pass on actually making that adjustment, as a lot of the other stuff was already done. So that expense, instead of being as a December 2024 expense, will float into December 2025.
I have a question about that, Mike.
Yep.
Sorry, I have a question about that, Mike.
Yep.
Casella is one of those companies that tends to bill later in the month. Would it be copacetic to estimate that bill based on the bill of lading for the monthly totals and book it for the previous year, instead of waiting for the invoice to come in?
Well, you certainly can do that. Again, with our materiality calculations and those type of things as to see what's material or not, we would still look at that, and if the estimate was low, you'd still have a number on this schedule saying this difference of the estimate. To be quite honest, in doing the years of audits number, this one just slipped through, period. It's not normally an issue ever.
All right, just wondering. Thank you.
Yep. The second one is the district's OPEB adjustment. We have this every year. So the district goes through the health trust to buy its health insurance, and they have what they call an additional benefit, that they have an actuary review done, financial statement, that splits that up between everybody that's participating with the trust. And the liability for Scarborough, which is on page 22, and I know my slide is incorrect here, I have to cross out some of these numbers. But the liability is on note 8 and page 22, it's about $158,000. So this $158,000 is not material to the financial statements. And in addition, as I've talked about for a number of years when this was coming up, that the liability is never going to actually be recognized per se by the district, because the benefit is to provide retirees with basically a COBRA of health insurance after they've ended employment here. So that employee that elects to continue their health insurance with the trust would have to pay the full premiums. This is just a actuary determination of the benefit. So we've elected to just disclose it, which we've done for a number of years now. And we've elected to just disclose it, and so the readers understand where the liability is coming from, but it isn't actually recorded on your books. So that has, and the way you read this on the evaluation form that's part of the letter is, the liability is about $158,000. It also has deferred inflows of 35,000 and deferred outflows of 50. So the net impact to your statement of position is about 142,000. And you can see the expense for this year is about 1,900 bucks. So it's kind of sitting right in that level, goes up and down, but no real impact. There's nothing other than premiums you pay that go through the district, which are expensed, and they're part of the budget, and they're part of all of the expenses here. And this liability is calculated, and we just have to adjust it every year. So looking at that, and in addition, in the position where you can just get out of the trust if you want to, and then all of that would go away. So it didn't really make much sense at this point to record that liability. If it gets too significant, we may have to look at that to possibly record it. The last one is the deferred lease, and again, this is that interest I was talking about. So you would have to record an additional asset and a liability for the 17,000 of imputed interest under the lease standard. But again, we thought it was better for the users and readers of these financials, especially people that are not used to reading financial statements, just to kind of show it straight up and say, and this is what we're going to collect, and this is what we have for a right of use or a liability, and they both net to zero on your financials. Any questions on that letter? So on to the financial statements. The financial statements haven't changed. I'm just provided a slide of basically the table of contents. These are comparative, so you have 2 years. You can look at the numbers between each year to compare them and, ask questions on the changes of them. There's also, to start out the financials, although they're comparative, and it's 2024 to 2023, starts out with the Independent Auditor's Report. That's our opinion letter. Again, an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on the financials. You have the management discussion analysis. This is a summary of all the statements in the financial, and it just provides some additional highlights, which is a little bit easier read for individuals that want to review the financials and kind of have an understanding of some of the changes. Following that are your financial statements in net position. Those are the assets, the liabilities of the district as of December 31st, 2024 and 23. The net of those is the net position, which is your equity in the district. And that basically shows what's the overall assets less liabilities to compute that. Following statement is statement of revenues and expenses and the change in your net position. Those are the revenues for the year, the expenses for the year, and the change is kind of like if you were to think of a profit loss for the year. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, Mike, on the statement of net position,
Yeah,
it looked like the total current assets went up about 2.3 million. Non-current assets went down about $1 million, yet the total assets went up too. I wasn't sure what's a current asset versus a non-current asset.
yeah, I was gonna get to that on the next slide, but.
Be my guest. Go ahead. I won't interrupt the flow again. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, like I was saying, the change in assets, those are the revenue and expenses for the year. And you'll see that under operating expenses, there are large numbers. Those are basically the cost centers, and the detail for that is in the back of the financial that basically break that out. You have some non-operating revenues and expenses, but this year it's just revenue because you don't have any debt anymore. So you just have the non-operating revenue, the lease revenue is a good example for that. Gains and losses through your investments are in there. And then it has a change in net position. You have your capacity upgrade fees and other developer contributions to the district as additional assets going in, to have a change of net position of about 1.2 million this year. Following that is the statement of cash flows. As I talked about, the accruals, receivables, payables, depreciation in there. This breaks it down to the actual cash flow of the district. And you can see pretty much almost all the way down, it's about 2.2 million for this year. Following that are the notes. The notes are comprised of accounting policies, which takes up the first few pages, and then gives you some breakdown of some of those larger numbers on both the statement of financial position and the statement of revenues and expenses. There are a few other disclosures that are non-financial that are required to be in there, but there have been really no changes with the exception of the addition of the lease disclosure compared to the prior year. So the next slide here, kind of get to that point of the assets. This is a 5-year trend. Again, it's looking at all of the assets on page 12 of the statement of financial position. And I've kind of graphed these out so you can take a look at the changes. Other assets, that's your prepaids, that's only about 26,000, so it barely shows up on the screen here. Inventory, that went up about 20,000, that's a kind of a dark blue one there, that's up a little bit. Receivables, those went up about $50,000 this year, but you can see that they're pretty consistent year to year, and unless there's a large increase in rates or usage, that should remain pretty similar going forward. Investments, those are made up of 3 reserve funds, the capacity reserve, the fixed asset reserve, and the debt retirement reserve. This year, going through those reserves, there was about 2.3 million that was actually not invested into investments. It was sitting in a cash and cash equivalents account in the broker statement, in the broker's account. So what that means is there were some maturities of investments and they haven't been reinvested as of December 30th. So under the policies, when you have liquid investments that are sitting in the investments account, you're supposed to adjust those up to your cash to be part of cash. So overall, when you look at those 3 investment reserve accounts, there was about 2.4 million of what you'd call cash or liquid investments, meaning the investments equal their fair value, just like a dollar would equal a dollar, like in your cash account. So under the accounting standards, we need to move that up into cash. So you can see, when you look at the graph, you can see cash shooting up, and you can see the investments dropping. And that's that movement of 2.3 million. Normally, it's more of, say, 2023. 2023 had, generally they have like $40,000 to $50,000 in those cash accounts, but it all depends on a section of those investments that are in U.S. Treasuries that they mature, and there's also mutual funds in there, fair value at the time of the end of the year. That was to answer your question.
Thank you.
Can I add to the answer a little bit?
Sure.
The cash has been, the investments haven't been reinvested and maintained in cash such that the cash is available to pay for the 2 construction projects that are ongoing. So it's been a planned event as as things have matured, they just put them in the cash equivalents and left them there.
Any other questions? So staying on page 12, we're going to move to, first of all, still sitting on the assets, the next slide here. I can't put capital assets on the same slide because it's a lot large, but I always compare it to debt. Right now, you have no debt for 2023 to 2024. So you have full equity in all of the capital assets that you have on the books. And I guess to David's point, what you're doing right now with construction, you still have, you're still using your reserves to pay for those, and therefore you still will have no debt. It looks like it's dropped slightly, and that's primarily that depreciation. It's 1.5 million. You did have some assets that were added this year, the wet well rehab, and then some of the construction process on Snow Canyon Road. Those two that makes up about over $1 million of purchases in 2024. So when you net those, you're going to see a slight drop there, about $250,000. There was some other investments in other projects, pumps, those type of things. But that's kind of the change here with your capital assets. And a little bit better detail of this is in the notes in the back, page 20 and 21. You can see 2024s and 2023s, the construction in process, the additions of fixed asset, capital assets there, and purchases in different categories. Staying on page 12, kind of down in the middle of the liabilities, these are current liabilities because you don't have any long-term liabilities per se. Again, similar to when you looked at the receivables, your payables should be consistent from year to year as of December. Your accrued payroll has got a perfect graph here as it goes up and down based on what's accrued on the end date of the year and how much you owe employees. Interest is down to 0, obviously. It was very little at the end since 2020. The big graph in the middle was just a timing event. That was with the construction that the town was doing. And at the end of that year, there was an estimated payable booked for that. That was paid right after year end. So that's just more of a timing event for that. Looking at the current ratio, this is your current assets versus your current liabilities. The basic notion of this ratio is, do you have enough current assets to pay your current liabilities? Current liabilities and current assets would be what's in 1 year. So within 1 year, do you have enough to cover them? 2023 was about 6.3 to 1. And that means you could cover those 6 times over. Very strong position. This year, it's 13.8 to 1. Again, strong position. However, note that 2.3 million of investments are in there. If I were to take those out, I did a quick calculation from here, it would be pretty similar to 2023. Be right around 6.3 to 1. So very strong position for the district with those assets and liabilities.
Is there a benchmark for a district to sort of measure against?
Well, there isn't a benchmark necessarily for districts. I do know that Normally, financial institutions lend, at, 1.52, 2.5 to 1, before they'll start lending money to, regular business. I would assume that would be similar to a district. Districts is a municipality, so they're a little bit of a different animal, but, that's what I would use, 1.5 to 1, or even a 2 to 1 kind of area. Certainly knowing that there's no debt, so that would be, obviously, if somebody was lending, and you don't have any debt, then that may be additional consideration in doing so. But, financial institutions want to make sure that, you have your operations so they get paid on the debt, so it's generally what it is. Net position at the bottom of page 12. This is, again, the equity, and I put this graph in just to kind of show the, the trustees and the public here. The equity at the end of 2024 was $30.7 million of equity. That means you have assets less the liabilities, and so, which is very strong, and it's broken into 17.7 in your investment in capital assets, and unrestricted of just under 13 million. And I've put this on here because it kind of shows where that equity is. The 17.7 million is all invested in your capital assets, which means it's not spendable. It's underground, it's in the building, it's in, trucks and tractors and things like that. So having it just state $30 million net position is kind of a little bit of a misleader to readers of the financials. So the unrestricted and board designated pieces, the board designated is basically the reserve funds. Those are your investments at the end of the year, and those 3 funds. The rest of that, the 1.7, is basically spendable equity. Now, it's classified as board designated instead of restricted because the board can undesignate it, right? It can use it any way it wants to. They've just designated the funding of those 3 reserves in that manner, and have those in reserves. But where they're both really not restricted by an outside party, they're going to be treated as unrestricted on your financial statements. Any questions on that? So the next statement on page 13, statement of revenues, expenses, changes in net position. I just have a quick graph on the revenues, just to kind of see the user fees. Last year was about 4.5 million, just under. This year's about 4.7, so it's up a little bit from last year. But you see it's pretty consistent between all of those years. It's going up gradually.
Would you say it goes up probably at a 2% slope, maybe?
I would think it's right around a 2% slope. Underneath those revenues, there's some other revenues in there. They're minor. Things such as permit inspections, grease oil, sub-meter fees. Then you have the operating expenses. Again, the detail of those expenses are in the back, but they've been allocated to certain cost areas, such as the treatment plant, the pumping, lab expenses, compost inspections, collection system, and then there's some admin in general in there. Things like the depreciation are allocated over those, and you can see definitely the breakdown of all those expenses in the back. Fairly consistent from year to year. They've only gone up, actually went down about $200,000, so. Underneath that are anything non-operating, such as your investments, gains and losses, or that lease revenue that's in there. And then underneath that is showing what was put into the capacity upgrade fees. There's definitely a schedule for that. I believe there's one in the superintendent's report in the back, and there's also one in the management discussion analysis about page 10 about what went in there for fees this year. And you did have some contributions to systems, so developers build those and then they want you to maintain them, so they contribute them to the district. So overall, a change in net position about 1.2 million, went from 29 million up to 30. So good increase for the year there. Any questions on that schedule? So I didn't put a slide in for the cash flows, but that's on page 14 and 15. This just basically breaks down and takes out some of those accruals, like the payables, the receivables, and the depreciation, and just kind of shows the cash flows of the district. When you read this, if it's a positive number, you have cash flowing in. If it's got brackets, that means it's cash flowing out. So again, received from customers, that's primarily your fees, with your receivable change in there, and then your vendors and employees for services. Those, again, have those accrual changes in those. This is just straight cash for 2024. Purchase of investments, sales of investments, your return, which is your interest and dividends, the upgrade fees coming in, and then the lease revenue. Underneath that is the amount spent on capital assets for the year. So I'm going to go through the notes real quick. Again, right after this cash flow, you've got these notes of the financial. Page 16, 17, and 18 are all the accounting policies. Again, no changes here, except there was an addition of that lease policy that's on page 18. And it just kind of tells the reader what you're doing with the leases that's on the books, on the financials. 19 has that fair value of your investments, again, U.S. Treasury notes and mutual funds. And then your disclosure of the fair value, which is basically based on what the broker has on the statement, quoted market prices. 19 and 20 has a new lease disclosure. On 20, it just shows the future minimum rentals, which agrees to that number that's in your statement of financial position as a right-of-use asset and a lease receivable of about $180,000 over the next 5 years. And that just kind of gives you your cash flow on that. 20 and 21 is your capital assets. Some of the retirements in construction and process, understand, becomes an actual asset. So you're removing dollars out of your construction and process and actually capitalize them as an addition. And those are the areas that you purchased overall. It's about 1.7 million for the year. That 300,000 that's under the sewer system, that's a contribution by the developer. And we got 2023 on page 21. Again, some standard notes talking about the district's pension plan, concentrations, and then that OPEB or other post-employment benefits, just disclosing the outstanding liability of the health insurance trust. And then finally, just the commitments. 2 significant commitments going on right now. As of 2024, Pump Station 1, Sudge dewatering, and as of 2024, it's just showing you what the contract values are and what's been paid to date. Following that is that operating expenses, and then the superintendent's report. Any final questions on the financials or the governance letter?
Barring no more questions for Mike, I will ask for a vote. All in favor of the audit, accepting today's audit? None opposed. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Safe travels back in the rain.
Thank you. Probably when I get to where I am, it's gonna be snow.
Okay, I guess we're on to new business B.
Did you vote?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
you missed that. It was all in favor, 4-0. Lot 10, Market Basket.
Okay, on behalf of DSM Realty, Goral Palmer requested Scarborough Sanitary District Board of Trustees approval of the proposed 80,000 square foot grocery store market basket. I recommend approval with the following conditions. The wastewater flow allocation of 8,903 gallons per day of typical sanitary waste. This project is subject to the capacity reserve fee. The current capacity reserve fee is $20.06 per gallon and is adjusted monthly based on the ENR construction cost index. The current allocation for the lot is 160 gallons per day. Capacity reserve fee is due on the remaining 8,743 gallons per day. Based on the current rate, the total capacity reserve fee due is $175,384.58. Any additional flow is subject to additional approvals and capacity reserve fees. Complete sewer connection permit and grease interceptor permit and their associated fees shall be submitted to the district. No site sewer work shall be completed prior to receiving executed permits. With that, we do have Drew from Goral Palmer here to present about the project and answer any questions concerning it.
Motion to approve based on the conditions set forth by the superintendent.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Tony. Drew, you're up.
Thank you. Drew Gagnon with Goral Palmer, representing DSM Realty. Excited about this 80,000 square foot market basket going in the downs here. So this is try to orient everyone here. This is Market Street down here, which is paved, and Downs Road right up here, which they're working on. This is right in the center of the downs. This road is what we're calling, for a lack of a better name, a bypass road at this point. This is going to be under construction soon, and I think we received sanitary district approval for the mains in that road last month's meeting. Pump Station 28, which was mentioned in the superintendent's report, is right up here in the top right corner of the page. Everything that you're looking at here is going to be tributary to that Pump Station 28. The sanitary service for the market basket's going to exit at the rear and enter into the 8-inch gravity main along this road here. You can see it's a separate lot, but it's part of a larger development here for the town center. And it's going to be a nice development here for the town. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Drew? Go ahead, Tony. Want to put your mic on?
Sorry about that, Nick. Drew, it's kind of an odd question, but can you explain the parking in that area for the market basket?
Sure. Parking's out front here. There's, I think, 408 spaces for the market basket. It's all privately on site. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so there's 408 spaces?
Correct.
I mean, so the square footage was, we say 80,000, 85,000 square feet?
80,000, yep.
80,000 square feet.
Yep. It's about a 5-to-1 ratio.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
what it is? Okay.
yeah. So generally, grocery stores that we've seen, at least the ones I've worked on, are in the 5 to 6 space per thousand ratio.
Okay,
Is pretty typical.
thank you.
Which one was named first, Market Basket or Market Street?
I think they played on each other a little bit.
I thought
But
that-
Market Street was named first, but I think Market Basket was a target at that time.
Any other serious questions for Drew?
I thought that was a serious question.
Mine was
No,
not, yours
Nick,
was.
I
Yours
asked that
was.
question for a reason.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Westbrook,
No, yours was a
Yeah,
serious question,
that's-
mine was not.
okay.
That's, but in Westbrook, is the parking just not good?
it's horrible.
Good to know, good to know. I won't go there then. I'll have to
And
go to
that
this
question
one.
came from my wife, actually.
Well, I'm glad to help her out. I'm glad Drew could.
Thank you for the ratio, that's,
Yeah.
that was important.
When you have a parking issue, it means things are successful, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
what's the schedule if,
So they're preloading the building right now, and we just received approval through the town on Monday night. So I think they're gonna start, basically as soon as that preload's ready to come off, they're gonna start the building, and the opening date is fall of next year, so they're not wasting any time.
cool? Go ahead, Mike. Can you put your mic on?
So to the right of that development, that's where the intermed building is being built, correct?
It's this one right here.
Okay.
So this is Lot 2, and is that on the agenda, Dave? This is your next item on your agenda, is this. But Intermed is this building right here, which is also being preloaded, and that's under
Yep.
construction
Okay.
right now.
Barring no more questions, all in favor? None opposed?
Thanks.
So, moving on to Lot 2 of the Downs. On behalf of Crossroads Holding LLC, Goral Palmer requested the Scarborough Sanitary District Board of Trustees approval of 2 buildings. Building A is proposed single-story retail building, and Building B is a 5-story mixed-use building. Anticipated uses are as follows. Building A is 46,350 square feet of retail. Building B, there's gonna be 6,330 square feet of retail, 9,420 square feet for a restaurant, and 76 residential units. I recommend approval with the following conditions. Wastewater flow allocation is as follows. Building A at 3,940 gallons per day. Building B at 24,038 gallons per day. The project is subject to capacity reserve fee. The current capacity reserve fee is $20.06 and adjusted monthly, based on the ENR. Similar, the current allocation for this lot is 160 gallons per day, and the capacity reserve fee due is on the remaining difference. Fee due is $558,029.08. Any additional flow subject to additional approvals and capacity reserve fees. Building B, commercial, a separate commercial water meter shall be used to measure the water flow to the commercial establishments within Building B. And a complete sewer connection and grease interceptor permits and their associated fees shall be submitted to the district. No site sewer work shall be completed prior to executed permits.
Again, motion to approve based on the conditions set forth by the superintendent.
Thank you, Jason.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, Drew, you're up again.
So this is right next to the Market Basket we were just discussing. This is interesting development. So the building immediately adjacent to the Market Basket is what we're calling Retail A, Building A. There's Right now, there's 4 individual leasable spots in there for retail, which is why we have 4, and we brought individual services for each potential retailer into there. 3 come off the back into the bypass road, and 1 goes off into Downs Road, off to the right. And then the second portion of the development, and I should say, Lot 2 is kind of a backwards L-shaped here. There's 2 out parcel, I think they're each a few acres large, that will front Market Street at some point. So there's going to be future development on what we're calling at least Lot 2 at this point, in addition to what you're seeing here. This building, which we're calling Building B, is the mixed-use building. It kind of looks like there's 2 different buildings because that's what the foundation plan looks like, but there's a via, what they call a via, on the first floor, so pedestrians will be able to walk through from the parking lot and sidewalks to Downs Road, and then the top 2, 3, 4, 5th floors are all connected. So it's interesting and very urban. And the first floor is all retail and restaurant uses. I think there's 6 different spaces, leasable spaces in there right now. 3 restaurant, 3 retail is what they're planning on. They're connecting to a private sanitary main in this parking lot, which is going to convey flow to a public sanitary main that was part of the subdivision application that conveys flow to pump station 28. So we provided a gravity public main kind of east-west on this plan in this drive aisle here to get the lots on this side. That was strictly for trying to keep, it was a shorter route than going through the public right-of-way. And then above on the 2 through 5 floors of this building are the 76 residential units. They're I think it's 10 studio apartments, 30 or so, 1 bedroom, and the remaining, which is 36, something like that, 2 bedroom. So they're kind of that urban design. I think that's it. Happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Tony.
So this is called mixed use, is that what it is?
Yes.
It's interesting, the array of different, the smaller businesses, residential, market basket, interesting array of use of lots.
Yeah.
Fine. And so,
Yeah, I think on the developer's intent is to get a couple national retailers, but then more local, smaller shops too, to blend in, to create an environment.
Any other questions for Drew?
No.
I'm curious, the restaurants, are they going to have grease traps inside or grease interceptors outside?
Outside.
Any possibility one of these retailers might want to turn into a restaurant later?
We've talked about that with the development team, and we've told them the different opportunities and what we're planning on. 2 of the restaurants on this side are sharing a grease trap, and that's going to be a maintenance agreement with that. So I think in the future, if we're going to switch approvals from retail to restaurant, the opportunity to connect into it could be available in the future.
How big is it?
How big is what, the grease
The
traps?
grease trap.
They're 2,000 gallons each. There's 2 of them shared for 3.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Barring no more questions for Drew, all in favor? None opposed. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Budget summary.
The 4-month budget summary is included in your packet. I recommend approval.
Motion to approve?
Thank you, Jason.
Second?
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, comments on the budget? Barring none, all in favor? None opposed. Public comments, any? Trustee comments, I think we'll start with Tony.
I was kind of lost a little bit with it. almost kind of lost a little bit with the audit, but I kind of, some parts of it, I think I got. That was a quite interesting presentation. I thought it was a good meeting, and thank you for everyone attending. Appreciate it.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, another successful month for the district, and congratulations to the staff on another well-done year with the audit.
Cool. Jason?
Echo the comments on the audit, thanks to the staff, and especially Serena and Wendy that put a lot of work in on, outside of normal work hours, I know. Very appreciative of all their efforts there, and to the rest of the staff for another successful month. And thanks to Mike and Willett Associates for coming in tonight and putting together a good presentation for us so that we can try to understand what's going on behind the scenes.
Cool. All right, so I want to wish safe travels to our fellow trustees. I also want to wish everyone a happy and safe, blessed Memorial Weekend. And I'll ask for the final motion of the evening.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jason.
Second.
Thanks, Tony. All in favor? Okay, we're done.